Friends, let us continue our discussion on runaway reactions and hotspots in the tubular reactor. And just to refresh ourselves, let us look at this simulation of xylene oxidation, and what we are seeing here is the oxidation by carrying out this reaction at different partial pressures of oxygen. So, we have on our x axis the length of the reactor and on y axis the partial pressure of the reactant, and these different colored lines that you are seeing are essentially different partial pressures such as 0.012, 14, 16, 175, 178, 181 and so on. The point I would like to make here is that if, for example, if our partial pressure, that is initial partial pressure, is 0.012, then we have a slow decrease in the partial pressure as the reaction takes place, and corresponding temperature results are shown over here, where temperature is maintained at a fairly low value. But as we are increasing the partial pressure, we notice that the reaction is progressing now rapidly, for the reason that not only the partial pressure is high, because reaction is progressing rapidly, there is more heat generated. So, temperatures are also high, and because temperatures are high, once again reaction rates are high. So, it is a feedback kind of loop, and these are all these cases that we see. For a partial pressure such as 0.0175, and notice the small difference that we are making. We are actually changing partial pressures now in the second digit or third digit. So, which implies the sensitivity of the process. We see that the temperature, for example, if you look at this result at 0.1075, temperature has arisen and given rise to what we can say small hotspot in the reactor. This is that line, in case you are not able to see it. At 0.0176, so we have now changed it in only third decimal place. The temperature has gone up in the reactor by the order of almost 100 degree Kelvin. But what happens when our partial pressure is 0.0181? The reactant comes down to a 0 value in a very short span of time. But what is worrisome is, look at the temperature when the partial pressure is 0.181. These are the temperatures which is actually now overshooting this scale. That means a very high temperature in excess of 300 to 400 K increase. And what happens then is that you have a hot spot, and this is the phenomena I was referring to. The slope of this curve is almost infinity at this particular location. Now, what happens when the temperatures go very high? Reaction rates go very high. So, we have a rapid decrease in the partial pressure, or the reactant is consumed, and once the reactant is consumed, the heat generation term has disappeared because reaction has come to an halt, and therefore, temperatures rapidly go down also. But we are not so much interested in this part of the curve, because we do not know what will happen if temperatures go out significantly high. And we were trying to analyze this behavior by looking at how we can analyze this in terms of the heat behavior, and for that we wrote our mass and energy balances, which we could represent in terms of heat generation term and heat removal term. And we simplified this generation term, because in actual practice this would have a term conversion, but we said that we will set this to close to 0 because we would like to analyze, and what we saw in the last session was this kind of behavior. namely, if we look at our QG curve was of this nature. Okay, so what we are plotting here is temperature versus this is QG, and QR curve can take different values depending upon this parameter psi, which is a Semenoff parameter as we had defined over here, which is combination of all heat removal term and heat generation term. So, in fact, it is a ratio of these two potentials. So, what happens is when psi value is very high, that means heat generation term is much higher compared to heat removal, we have the operating line, which let us show it by a different color, of this nature. And on the other hand, if psi is a low value, then we have a operating line of this nature. So, we last time saw that what happens if your operating line is with a high value, a low value of psi, then the slope is very high, and as temperature is increasing, the difference between the generation and the heat removal is progressively decreasing, and so we will have an operation where temperature is more or less constant. This is what is seen in this particular behavior when partial pressures were low, that is temperatures are fairly rapid. But let us consider another situation where psi value is very high. So, this is the slope. So, notice what is happening as temperature is increasing. The driving force, it appears that it will go down, but then it goes on increasing, or in other words, generation term is in far excess of heat removal term, and that is where we will get our hot spot. Now, this was the case when we neglected the reaction. So, even for this particular case, let us try to see how we can get those conditions. So, let us try to look at this behavior once again. So, this was our generation term, and now we know that if you have actually an operating line which is just tangent to this curve at this point, let us call this point as E. Okay. So, this slope as let us say 1 over psi c, okay, some critical point, then any value, any line which is below this is a sure shot for runaway reaction. So, this gives me one bound on what is the limit of my safety operation. That is, if this heat removal line is a tangent to heat generation line at point E. Similarly, I could have another tangent at point F. I know if my curves are on this side, I have a safe operation. So, in short, we can now therefore find out the range of operations for which my operation will be a runaway reaction or a safe operation, or maybe runaway, maybe a safe operation. So, how do we do that? We do that by noting that at point E and F, what is happening? QG is equal to QR, and the slope of these two lines is equal. That means, not only the generation rate and heat removal rate are equal, but the rate of change of heat generation with temperature is same as rate of heat generation, heat removal with temperature. And so, using these two equations, we can actually find out corresponding values of, let us say, critical temperature 1 and critical temperature 2. Let us call that point as theta c prime, and if we do little bit of mathematics, this actually results into a quadratic equation, and we end up with theta c, for example, being gamma by 2. This parameter gamma was defined in the previous session, namely E by RT 0. And knowing this value and also realizing that we have our Semenov number. So, corresponding to this, we will get the slope of that line, and let us call that slope as 1 over psi c, where psi c, as we know from the definition, is now we also know that we can write concentration in terms of pressures, partial pressures. If you assume ideal gas, for example, and there is a critical value psi c, or in other words, we can therefore find out the relationship between this curve with a known value of psi c now defines a phase plane behavior or the separatrix in the phase plane of P10 and T0. So, let us try to look at that. Okay. So, that relationship for psi c equal to whatever in terms of P10 and T10. Now, we get this separatrix, and if the combination of P10 and T10 is such that our psi value is in this regime, we have a runaway reaction or sensitive region, and in this regime we have a insensitive region. So, this gives us a kind of operating guidelines as to what inlet temperatures and pressures should we be avoiding. Anything in this region is a recipe for disaster. Now, going back to our example, we said that we neglected the reaction altogether. Okay. So, in plotting this, we said that this term is unity, this particular one. Now, let us just qualitatively try to see what will happen as the reaction proceeds and how do we get that hot spot. Okay. So, to do this, I am going to redraw this figure, but I just want you to notice the following fact. If this is my line QG with x equal to 0, then for a different value of x, my QR curves remain same, but my QG will have a lower value. So, for x, I am just going to take it will still start with a lower value, and it will have a lower curve. Okay. So, I want to keep that in mind. For example, this will be, let us say, x for 0.1. So, in other words, what is going to happen to our generation curve as reaction is proceeding is that this generation curve is going to shift downwards. Okay. So, let us keep that information in mind, and let us now try to look at an operation what will actually happen in a plug flow reactor when the reaction is taking place. Okay. So, let us say at the start of my reaction, this is my generation curve, okay, and my operating line was something like this. So, I'll just put just for sake of argument. So, this is my value of psi. So, this is my QR curve and this is my QG curve with x equal to 0. Okay. So, initially my temperature rise is limited, because as my temperature is increasing, my heat generation is coming closer to heat removal. So, what I am now going to do is draw progressively lines with okay. So, let us say that this is QG of x equal to 0.1, this is of 0.2 and so on. Okay. So, now you have to imagine the following situation: my temperature is increasing, so is my conversion. So, for example, from start, if my operating point or somewhere along this reactor, see this is my x equal to 0, that is my conversion, and at some location x will become 0.1, 0.2 and so on, and temperatures will also change. So, now let us consider a situation where I am somewhere in the between these two regimes. So, what will happen? My generation rate has come down, but still I will be near this operating point and my difference is still narrowing. But now let me consider an situation where this is my temperature in the reactor, this is my temperature in the reactor and my conversion is 0.2. So, I have a curve which goes like this, okay, and this is my operating line. So, now when I have this, and let me clear this few things over here, so that and let me show my operating line. And okay. So, if my if my temperature is, let us say, over here, just for sake of argument, and conversion is 0.2, then I see that this particular branch of intersection point has completely disappeared and the only point where intersection can occur is at this high temperature. So, what will happen? My temperature will suddenly go to a high value or a hot spot. But then once again, as the reaction is proceeding, as I said earlier, that because conversion will be almost complete, the rate of reaction will go to 0. So, generation will also go to 0, and once again our temperatures will come back. So, this is what happens when we have a plug flow reactor. Now, let us try to look at what kind of scenario will emerge if we have a stirred tank reactor, because we saw an example where stirred tank reactor also gives rise to multiplicity. So, let us say that we have a stirred tank reactor and some jacketed vessel, so that we are trying to maintain the temperature. Okay. So, let us try to write down the mass and energy balances for now stirred tank reactor by again taking A1 going to A2, an exothermic reaction as our model reaction, and let us try to see what will happen. So, if I write my mass balance, I have, keeping the same notations as before, that is F prime is my volumetric flow rate and my reaction is nth order reaction. C10, T0 are temperatures here, C1 and T are temperatures at the outlet, Tr is the temperature of the coolant. Once again I will assume that my properties are not changing with temperature, and so I can write my energy balance in the following manner. I am just repeating what we had seen earlier. That is, each of these term on the right hand side, first term is the energy transport due to convection. So, material is coming in with certain enthalpy Hj0, is leaving with certain enthalpy Hje. There is a second term which is representing the generation of energy because of reaction, and the third term the removal of energy. Okay. So, to these mass balances and then we will write Hj0 minus Hje as Cpj minus T minus T0 and so on, or T0 minus T, and we will use the same dimensionless parameters as before. N minus 1, and in terms of these dimensionless quantities, I can once again write my mass and energy balances in terms of these dimensionless quantities. So, I am going to just substitute these quantities in this mass balance and do some rearrangement, and we will get the following equation. I am skipping this substitution part, but you can try it out and see whether this is what we actually get. Our mass balance, and for our energy balance, we will get once again minus this particular quantity. Where did these terms come from? These terms come from these AKU term and that enthalpy term. Okay. But what is interesting to once again realize is that our energy balance is once again a balance between heat generation rate, which is actually the same term as what we had before, and the heat removal term, which is slightly complicated than before, but it has the same essence of representing how much energy is being removed from the system. There are two terms here and both these terms, this one is obviously coming from the heat exchange or heat removal due to the jacketed fluid, whereas this term is arising because of heat removal due to the change in the enthalpy of the system. So, convective energy removal. But the point is, once again we can write as Qg minus Qr, and as you know, in stirred tank reactor, we have a steady state. So, this is actually a precise description. Okay. This is our precise description, or in addition to, of course, our mass balance dx d tau also being equal to 0, which if we consider a first order reaction will give us this particular relationship. So, now if we combine these two mass and energy balances, we can actually represent our energy balance or Qg term by combining mass and energy balances. And Qr term as so, if we want to now look at the steady state behavior of this particular stirred tank reactor operation, what do we need to do? We need to plot Qg as a function of temperature. What is K prime? K prime is coming from our reaction rate constant. So, that is e raised to theta by 1 plus theta by gamma. Okay, the same term that we had before. So, if we now try to plot this behavior, so let us try to once again do the same exercise, temperature and heat generation rate. It actually turns out that we have this very similar shape as before. So, this is Qg versus theta, and we have Qr, which once again can be represented by straight lines with a slope equal to this particular value. So, this is the slope of QR versus theta, and this is of course the intercept, okay, which is a non-zero, can be a non-zero value. But if you just scale it, make a linear transformation, we can show it to be starting from here. So, now let us see what happens here. Once again we see that if the slope of this line is high value, slope of this line is high value, then we have steady state temperature which is let us say steady state temperature 1, which is of a low value. But as we now what is the slope of this QR curve dependent on? Slope of this QR curve is dependent on, for example, area of heat transfer or heat transfer coefficient. So, and of course, the other terms, but if you just look at these two terms in particular, it becomes clear to us that high value of this slope means high heat removal rate, right. So, high value of this slope means high value of heat removal term. So, when heat removal is very large compared to generation, we have temperatures which are of low value. Now, what happens if heat generation is as we change the slope of this line? Now, how can we change the slope of this line? We can change the slope of this line by changing AK or U, or also by changing tau r value, which is the residence time, and we can change the intercept by changing the value of the coolant temperature. Okay. So, now what will happen when we change the value of the coolant temperature or the residence time such that the slopes go in this direction. So, what happens here? We have one steady state and then we have possibility of three steady states, and otherwise of course, there will be only one steady state somewhere intersecting beyond this line. Or in other words, if we now let us say plot, suppose we are changing this, we are carrying out an adiabatic reaction. Okay. So, what will happen for adiabatic reaction? For adiabatic reaction, this term is 0 because there is no temperature of the coolant and so on. This term is also 0 because there is no heat transfer mechanism. So, for adiabatic reactor, QR is simply 1 over tau r into K naught into theta. So, let us say that we change the residence time, and that is what the result we had seen earlier. If we change the residence time such that we start from a small value to a large value, what will happen to the steady state? From a small value to a large value of residence time implies that the slope of this line is decreasing. So, what will we get? So, we will get something like this. If you are looking at steady state temperature theta s versus residence time tau r, when tau r is low, we have only one steady state, and so we will have this lower branch of steady state. As we keep increasing the value of decreasing the value of this slope or increasing the value of tau r, what are we getting? We are getting 3 different values of steady state. So, this particular point, this point and this point, and we will have a behavior which we saw earlier. Okay. That is temperature. So, what will happen as we are changing the slope? If we are increasing the residence time, then we will have steady state which correspond to all these intersection points where Qg is equal to Qr, that means the lower branch. But if our residence time is such that our slope is below this line, or our removal rate is below this line, then what feasible solution we have? We have a feasible solution only with a high temperature. So, this is that regime. So, here we have only, in this regime we have only high temperature, in this regime we have only low temperature solutions, whereas for the intermediate value of residence time, we have possibility of 3 solutions, and hence we will have this kind of behavior. With increasing residence time, up to this point we are on the lower branch, then suddenly we will shift to the higher temperature solution behavior, and if we are decreasing the residence time, we will be on this particular branch of solution, but after this point we will suddenly shift to a lower branch. So, what this implies, this is for adiabatic reactor, and one can argue a similar behavior when we have even heat transfer, that is that coolant flow rate or heat transfer area or heat transfer coefficient and so on. So, what does this mean? This means that in a stirred tank reactor, operation at steady state, let us take this example of adiabatic reactor. What it means practically? It means that under certain range of our residence times, we have multiple solutions. That is, 3 different steady states are possible. Okay. Let us say at this particular residence time tau r1, I have steady state 1, steady state 2 and steady state 3. So, there is a question arises that which one of this steady state we will get with our reactor. I mean, how do we know that whether we will get steady state 1, steady state 2 or steady state 3? So, that will depend on, as we saw here, what was our starting condition. For example, if I had started my residence the reactor for residence time of tau r1 and the initial temperature of my reactant was something close to this 0.1. So, suppose this was my inlet temperature, then one can expect that we will reach this particular steady state. But suppose my inlet temperature was somewhere over here, then you can expect we will reach steady state number 3, that is we will have this particular steady state. So, it all depends on where you start your reactor. So, in other words, for stirred tank reactor, even though you are interested in steady state, what steady state you will get will depend upon where you start up your reactor, and therefore, startup of the reactor is also an important aspect in deciding how the reactions will take place and what steady states we will get. The second question that one would like to therefore ask is, what happens if I start over here at this particular value of temperature? Will I go to steady state number 2, because that appears to be the closest steady state? Let us try to answer that question in in this particular manner. Now, so let us say that this was my steady state 1, this was my steady state 2 and this is my steady state 3, and I am going to remove some of this material so that we have only required now let us look at what is happening if I am at this particular steady state. Okay. So, this is my temperature versus this QG curve, and let us say that my from this particular steady state I am slightly away from that steady state and slightly away from that steady state in this direction. Okay. So, if I am away from this steady state in this direction, what do I see here? If you focus on this, I see that QG is greater than QR. What does that mean? That means heat generation rate is higher than heat removal rate. So, what will be happening in our reactor? If heat generation is higher than heat removal, temperature will increase. So, we will start moving in this particular direction till such time that I come to this particular value of steady state where QG is equal to QR. Now, let us see what happens if I am away from that steady state temperature in this particular direction. So, in this direction what is happening? My QR is greater than QG. So, what will happen to my temperature? The energy removal rate is higher than energy generation. So, temperatures will start falling and I will once again come back to this particular steady state. Or in other words, at this particular steady state, any perturbation in the temperature, either temperatures becoming lower than the steady state value or higher than the steady state value, the dynamics of the process will ensure that we are driven back to that particular steady state, or in other words, these perturbations will die out. Let us try to see what happens at steady state 3, or in other words, in the same thing can be said in other way, that this steady state is a inherently stable steady state. That is, any perturbation that you carry out from in the positive direction or in the negative direction will die out and we will come back to the steady state. We will look at what are the formal definitions of steady state, inherently stable steady state and so on little later. But let us try to look at what will happen at steady state 3. Okay. So, let us come to steady state 3 and let us say that we make a perturbation once again in the directions in this particular direction. What is happening there? Once again QR is greater than QG. QR is greater than QG. So, we will come back to this steady state. If we make a perturbation in this particular direction, QG will be greater than QR, or in other words, we will go back to the same steady state, or in short, this steady state number 3 is also an stable steady state, whereas 1 is also stable, 3 is also stable. So, let us try to look at what happens at steady state number 2. So, let us say that I make a perturbation so that temperature goes down. If temperature goes down corresponding to this steady state, what do I see? I see my QR is greater than QG. This blue line is above this red line. So, what has happened in this particular case? When my temperature has gone down, my heat removal rate is in excess of heat generation rate. So, what it means? My temperature will go down even further. How long will it keep on going down? Till I come to this particular point, because here we saw that if we decrease the temperature, it will try to increase it once again. Okay. Now, what will happen if I increase my temperature? If I increase my temperature, I see that QG is higher than QR. So, now QG is higher than QR. So, what will happen? Rate of heat generation is more than the rate of heat removal. So, we will have further increase in temperature. And how long can this go on? Till we will come to this point 3, because here we saw that this is a stable steady state. In short, any perturbation at steady state number 2 is not going to die down, it is in fact going to amplify. We call such steady states as inherently unstable steady state. So, we have steady state 2 is unstable and steady state 1 and 3 are stable steady state. We will look at the formal definitions and how we do this analysis in our next session. But before we close for today's session, let us qualitatively try to look at, or rather quantitative terms, what is this condition that is not satisfied at this particular point. So, what is the feature of steady state 1 and 3 which is not there in steady state 2. Okay. We can look at this in the following manner. Let us look at what is happening at steady state 3. If we increase the temperature, QR value is higher than QG value, right. That means, the rate of change of QR with temperature is more than the rate of change of QG with temperature, because at steady state 3 both QG and QR are same, but increase in temperature QR is higher, or in other words, at this point d theta or of temperature with respect to QR is more than d theta with respect to QG. I see that same is case at steady state 1, that is heat removal rate slope of heat removal line is more than the slope of heat generation line. But is that the case at steady state number 2? I see the contrary. At this condition, d theta of QG is higher than d theta of QR, because slope of this red line is higher than the slope of this blue line, and red line being the generation line and blue line being the removal line. So, in short, if my heat removal rate slope is more than the heat generation rate slope, then I have steady state which is stable. This is those points. So, the condition that is required for steady state to be unstable for this particular example is the slope of heat generation rate is higher than the slope of heat removal rate. We will see how this condition is obtained in a more formal way when we look at stability of chemical reactors in our next session. So, in today's session we essentially saw what is the origin of this parametric, so called parametric sensitivity behavior. Basically, in exothermic or reactions in which reactors are operated in an non-isothermal manner, this parametric sensitivity arises because of heat generation within the reacting system. And if the system is not able to balance this heat generation with heat removal, we are likely to the situation is ripe for a sensitive behavior. Now, what kind of behavior can we expect? For example, this gives rise to multiplicity of steady states in a CSTR, with some steady states being stable, some being unstable. It gives rise to hotspots in tubular reactor, where for small change in the inlet condition, we suddenly see the temperatures shooting up. Although we did not discuss it in detail, but an analogy between plug flow reactor and a batch reactor would convince you that the same behavior must be responsible for explosions in the batch reacting system, such as methyl nitrate decomposition or hydrogen peroxide hydrogen and oxygen reactions. So, one has to be extremely careful in designing the reactors to avoid this sensitive region. Having said this, I should also point out, it turns out that most of the times the operation which gives you maximum return on your reaction, return in terms of productivity or yield, is often very close to the sensitive region of operation. So, on one hand, from safety aspects you do not want to be in that region, but from economic considerations or from profitability considerations, we have to be close to that region, which implies that we must have extremely good control systems, so that we even accidentally we do not go into that sensitive zone. So, for example, moment you realize that there is a decrease in coolant temperature or decrease in the flow rate, all these will have to be compensated accordingly. So, firstly we should have good identification system which will identify these deviations, and secondly a good control system which will effectively take care of such perturbations. Otherwise, we may land up into a undesirable operating region. So, we will stop here for this session and spend some time on looking at the stability analysis in general and that of chemical reactors in particular. That will be the topic for the next session. Thank you.